Well, thank you for taking time out of, what is obviously a very busy period. Obviously, we're here to talk about Scared to Death, which is, part of this year's 20th anniversary FrightFest Glasgow. How are you feeling about the screening? Because I'm guessing this is home turf screening for you, right?
Yeah, I'm terrified. No, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be interesting just to see it in front of that audience. You know what I mean? Because it's an American film, but I'm Scottish, and there's a certain sense of humor in the movie. I think that those people will connect to culturally. I think, but we'll see. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting. You know, you never know with audiences, right? It's people are so polarized about movies. It's always hard to gauge. But I'm looking forward to it. To just hopefully we'll have a good Q&A.
And, for people, that haven't really had a chance to sort of like delve into what the Fright Fest lineup is all about, what is, Scared to Death going to bring to people? What's that elevator pitch that kind of got this hooked and made?
Well, the film is based on a real experience. I went to buy a house 20 something years ago, and it was a sell by owner. And the guy, the day we moved in, was like, "Oh, by the way, this house is haunted." USC were here in the 70s, where there was poltergeist experiences, that someone died in the 20s, that this prostitute, it used to be a halfway house. And basically that set into motion a series of events where my wife and my kids were experiencing things, and I wasn't, because I don't believe in ghosts, just not because, just something I've never seen. So, and I kind of went into this concept of, like, seeing, we think seeing is believing, but really believing is seeing. If you believe in things, you'll literally manifest in front of you. So it started there. And from a real experience, we lived in an old creepy house, just like the one in the film. And I would walk around at night looking in the mirrors thinking I'm going to see something, and never happened. But they would all the time. So it's really about a film crew that are going to make a horror movie about a seance, and they decide to go to a real one, just to have a real one, just for the experience, for the movie, to see if they can glean anything from it for the experience. And that's their first mistake. Everything goes wrong in the house. They kind of get stuck in there and have to find a way out. But they're all kind of a little bit conceited. They're film people, so the humor comes from that, of a bunch of entitled people trapped in a situation that they can't get out of. So yeah, it's comedy. It's horror. It's a scary movie, but it's really kind of more comedic. I think over the, on top of it, it's trying to do something a little bit different, with the tone.
Yeah, it's kind of got a little bit of that Evil Dead vibe to it, where it's got those scary moments, but then it's also got some those sort of more slightly sillier, like.
That's a great compliment. I mean, I would only wish to get a comparison to that movie, but yeah, I mean, that was the thing. And also, when Lynn Shaye came onto the project, to me, I know she's been in horror movies, but I love her for her comedy. Do you know what I mean? For all the Farrelly stuff she did. And so to me, and I never really realized going into the film with her that it was gonna lean that way, because we did, we were thinking more Insidious initially. We were going to make this scary movie, but when we started working with her and she started working on her dialogue, it just became what it was meant to be, which was ironic and funny. And then so I leaned into that and was like, let's go silly. Let's go to the place where this is just like, this is ridiculous, and make it a little more farcical. So the suspension of belief is easier because, you're in a world with these different, they're not real characters, they're kind of heightened characters, archetypes. Not just of the film business, but of like a family. They kind of, it functions like a dysfunctional family. So yeah, yeah, but when you're walking a tightrope doing horror and I mean, tragedy and comedy is kind of the same thing, but with horror, do you know what I mean? It's a fine line. Some people just might not get it. Like a lot of horror festivals, I don't think they got our film over here in America. They were like, they're just expecting more straight up horror, where ours is a little bit tongue in cheek.
And it's a great role for Lynn Shay. Like you say, she does have this great comedic background as well as being in Nightmare on Elm Street, Critters, Insidious. She was also in like your Detroit Rock Cities, which is great. And I just feel like it's just a great character as well, particularly for a woman to play, because I think it'd be so easy for, because she's this very sort of a aggressive, opinionated, egotistical director. It would have been so easy to have made that male, but I think it's quite interesting that, it's a female director that you've placed into this role.
I'll tell you how that happened. I think I was following the cliche initially because it was a man. Do you know what I mean? And she and the woman character was going to be Felix, which was the medium. So when we started working, and that was the original layout, just because I just imagined it that way. But as soon as I spoke to her, she was like, no, 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 I need to play the boss. So she had an integral part in changing that. And then it was like, oh my God, that's perfect. But I was also a little terrified because we portray this woman. I mean, she's a horrible person in the film. But we kind of also reveal the flip side that something happened to her, like she's has her own trauma. So, and because it was funny, we thought it doesn't matter. Let's just see her be the worst, most intense, person she can be to this crew of people, which also is kind of a parallel to what it's like in Hollywood, or at least what it used to be like with just these dictators. You know what I mean? Like even her producer calls her the benevolent dictator. You know, what I mean, that was a real quote from working with Sting years ago. It was like that's how he was described himself, which I just thought was fucking hilarious. If you're gonna own it.
And I think along with Lynn Shay, you've also got, Bill Moseley. Both of them are these, icons and titans of horror. What is it like, to work with, horror royalty? What experience do they bring to a project?
Oh my God. I mean, it was, you know, when you do this was a little film, a little small indie. So when you do things on this level, you have to be realistic with regards to your expectations of who you're going to get in the film, right? Because then at that point, people are only doing it because they love the film. They're not really doing it for the paycheck. So, I hoped we would get Bill, and he signed on straight away. And he read it, and what was interesting to him was that he got to play. He wasn't playing the monster, which he ended up doing it because he plays two characters in the film. But so he was excited because he actually had lots of dialogue, and he got to play a different role, and to be funny and work along with Lynn. So those two were great. We had a lot of new young actors in the film, so they were like a good, guiding rod for them. I mean, it was just they made everyone raise their game a little because, from their experience, we wanted to kind of rise up and try and, be on their level. And they made it easy for us. I mean, they made it easy. Do you know what I mean? And Lynn, the good thing about her is that she just never settled, especially we were working on the script for a year and a half. It was never just like, oh, that's okay. We really dug into it. And as a writer director, for me, there's three films. There's the one you write, the one you shoot, and the one you end up with. And that's really true in this case. Like it evolved in a tremendous ways over the three phases of the script, Which is why for me, I'm not all like, oh, I've made the greatest film. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? As a creative, it's a ball of clay. Like I'm kind of like it changed shape, it turned into this. Does it work? Does it, that's up for the audience to decide.
And then you've got Kurt, who you place in the character, of the Grog, who is a Lin Shay, a Bill Moseley. I mean, that must have been a little bit daunting for him to be like, you were essentially kind of playing a riff on these actual genuine people that are also in the film.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really him. I mean, he was not that guy is my creative partner. He is behind Bald Man Films. He directed and wrote his own movie. He's a touring musician. So he's not an experienced actor. So to me, when I worked with Grog, the name Kurt, actually, the character Grog, I was like, look, just be you, because he's this really kind, he looks like a hard nut, but he's like the softest, nicest guy. So I was just like, look, just be yourself, and he was, and he did, and he ended up being kind of the heart of the film in a way because he's such a naive, kind of sweet guy. He ends up fighting to protect them. You know what I mean? But he's kind of the cliche where he's stuck in the past of his own career in the film of like, oh, this reminds me of a movie. You know what I mean? This kind of running joke that runs through the film. But he's meant to represent the heart of what's good about it and the kind of fantasy of our business, which we kind of lose a little. Everyone's a filmmaker now. You know what I mean? Everyone's on Instagram. Like the mystique has gone. It's more about, it's even called content now. Do you know what I mean? It's interesting. It's interesting. So, for me, the challenge is just to try and have my own voice. That's it. In a world where there's so many movies and so many amazing things, it's like, how do you do your own thing? Like, how do you try and have your own voice within that? That's the challenge, I think. Yeah.
And looking, sort of through your IMDb history, you've got a wealth of music videos, um, and sort of, looking throughout history, music videos to feature films is a path that, a lot of filmmakers, have done, Michel Gondry, David Fincher. What do you think it is about that format that then makes it such a great training ground to then go on and make feature films?
I think for me, it was always a sketchbook, right? So because I was always making films as a teenager. So when I got into music videos, it was really, okay, I can try motion control. Oh, I can try animate. It was really an ability for me to experiment. And I think the real skill that you can learn from doing it is how to tell a story in 3 minutes. If you can tell a story in 3 minutes and actually capture people's interest, then you can do it in 90. And I think it allowed us as because I was at Propaganda Films with Fincher, Spike Jonze, Michael Bay. I was one of 10 directors there at the time, and I remember going to them and saying, "Hey, I want to make films too, but I want to write and direct my own movies." And they're like, "Well, you'll get there. It's just going to take a lot longer, because that's the world that I live in." But that's what it's about to me. And but I think that's it. I think videos, if you really work hard at it and you're trying to develop a narrative skill, what better a place to do it within a limited time? Really, you have to hone your skills, and also on videos and commercials, you're in the edit bay all the time. Do you know what I mean? At least for me, it was a process to learn everything, cinematography, production design. I mean, everything, because you're right there and you're doing them. I was doing one every couple of weeks. It was, but it also got in the way too. I did 200 and something. So to me, I'm like, fuck, all that time where I could have, that's how I battle against it now where I look back going, fuck, I should have been doing more films. But I guess that was my learning curve, because I also wanting to write and direct, it took a lot longer for me to kind of really learn to write and to get to a place where the scripts, are working and selling. So this is movie number 5. So we're getting there.
Yeah. And I guess also, music videos also, they tend to have a lot of tight turnaround, which is a very vital skill within sort of the independent film thing, because I mean, I imagine that this shoot is a similar length to a lot of other filmmakers that I talk to within, you didn't have a lot of time and you've still got to get, the same amount of footage as, the bigger studios have, months, if not a year to create.
Yeah, they have like 60 to 90 days. We're doing it in 20, So you're doing 10 minutes a day, 8 to 10 minutes a day, which is grueling. But also that's why doing it in one location, you simplify the problem. But my issue with that film was that there's 6 to 7 people on camera at the same time. I never thought about it going in, like how complicated that's going to be to shoot an ensemble on screen for most of the movie because just to have the coverage and the eye lines and not just shoot everything as a master, which is what I really went into this film wanting to shoot the film in masters with lots of group shots, which I did. There's a lot of wide shots in the movie where you can see a lot of depth of field. It's sharp all the way back. I wanted that to kind of represent more that classical style rather than being handheld all over the place, which is what my natural instinct is to be very organic. But with this, I kind of really locked it down and tried to be more classical. And that worked too within the concept of one location. But with 3 cameras, I mean, we were doing so many setups every day, like 30 to 50 setups. We never stopped. It was like a race, which is, I can't wait for the time to come where I actually have like real time to make a film, 2 or 3 minutes a day. That would be, will be great when that eventually happens.
Yeah, but there's that thing of, we then become like bored, like going, oh, back in the
Yeah.
day, I could have had all of this done, in half the time. So, I think it's it's quite nice to have that skill in your pocket so that should you need it, you
I
can
think
wheel it
so.
out.
But you know what it is? It just makes you adapt. Like, you know, having done so many smaller projects, you learn to adapt and you learn to figure out, you know, it's all problem solving, right? So it's really the math. It's time, money, and idea, you know, and you only need two. And usually there's no money. So you need time and you need a good idea. And as long as we have that, and time and prep can make up for a lot of time on the shoot. You know, if you have a lot of time in prep, you can just figure it out so that when you get there and you have those 10 or 12 hours, you're like, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to do. So I really storyboard everything. I mean, in super detail. But then when I get to the set, I don't bring the boards out. I know in my mind how I'm going to do it, and then I let instinct rule on the day with the actors to try and, you know, try and keep it fresh. You know, it's like I think I make it unnecessarily hard on myself, but you know, I've been doing it my whole life, and I want to challenge myself. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to just make it easy and plonk the cat. I want to try and be inventive, but that's hard in a world where there's so many creative, talented people, especially now, young people. It blows me away the stuff I see on TikTok and Instagram. It completely blows me away because I remember being a teenager and having a Super 8 camera and no outlet at all. Just going,
Mm.
okay, how the fuck am I going to do it from this Super 8? You know, now the opportunity is there for every kid to just do it. So the challenge is how good can you be? You know, how creative can you be? We live in an amazing time for
Yeah.
creators, I think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And obviously now that, Scared to Death is coming out into the world, have you got an idea about, what you want to do next? Are you staying in the genre? What can you tell us about the next project?
Well, the next film I'm doing is a drama called Relapse. It's about a musician who relapses into drug use when she's off tour and she can't get her tour going, and so she goes on the internet and has a meltdown on the internet, and there's an intervention. So it's kind of a family story. We're doing it as a fundraiser for Music Cares. We're shooting it in 10 days. Yeah. In May in one location. It's mostly one actress. And there's 20 actors, but it's mostly one actress on location. And a lot of Zoom stuff like we're doing now. So that's coming up next. And then I have a horror film that I'm doing in Scotland called Lord of the Witches, which is based on a real witch that lived in this town of Nairn where I grew up. Historically, it's a kind of supernatural thriller. So that's coming up. And I'm working on that when I come over for Scotland. We're kind of laying the groundwork when I come over for Fright Fest. So yeah, and there's like 20 other scripts. I mean, there's so many things in development, you know, because you never know which one's going to stick, you know. For years, when I first started, I'd be pushing one film for like 5 years. Oh, this film. Now there's so many projects because, you know, um, it's like having your hooks in the water. You just never know. And that's the one thing I've learned. You think there's a traditional way of doing it, but actually now we're working with an angel investor, so we're in a good situation where we don't have to go and raise money. But we're also at a certain budget level, and a lot of the scripts I've written are much bigger. So we'll see. You know, we'll see how it all
Yeah.
unfolds. If people like
I guess,
Scared to Death, that will make a difference.
yeah, yeah. And I guess, a final question, going back to the screening at Fright Fest, what do you hope that, Fright Fest attendees, get out of watching this film? What do you hope that they experience when they're watching it?
I just hope they have a good laugh, and I hope they get to jump out their pants a couple of times. There's a bunch of jump scares in the film. Hopefully they'll get spooked and have a good time, not to take it seriously. We're not trying to make the scariest, goriest movie. We're not. We're just trying to make a fun experience that all people can really see. It's not super gory, there's a little bit of language in it. So I just hope they take away that they had a good time. That's it. I'm interested I have no expectations. I'm interested just to hear reaction from different people in different countries to see if it connects across cultural lines. You know what I mean? Or only California is going to find it funny. Like I don't know, but we'll see.
Well, thank you so much for your time and best of luck with the film.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk about it. I appreciate it.